My officer husband Shen Jing's childhood sweetheart, Zhong Tian, fell down the stairs and got a concussion. She's now adamantly claiming that I was the one who pushed her. To avenge Zhong Tian, Shen Jingza ignored my desperate pleas and struggles. He ordered the guards to forcibly drag me, pregnant as I was, and lock me in solitary confinement. When I was finally released, I was covered in blood. I had lost the baby. Shen Jingza seemed to show a flicker of remorse. He gently took my hand and told me not to worry, that we were still young and could have another child. I just let out a cold, scornful laugh. There will be no child between him and me. I intentionally pummeled my own abdomen to induce a miscarriage, because I know, Shen Jingza and the child in my womb are both ungrateful wretches. For the sake of Zhong Tian, they would drive me to the brink, leaving me with nowhere to turn and no place to be buried. I've already lived one lifetime as the fish on the chopping block, utterly at the mercy of others. In this life, I will take control and rewrite this tragic fate before it unfolds. Years later, I became a financial magnate, amassing immense wealth and power. Meanwhile, Shen Jingza, who had soared to great heights in his previous life, was reduced to a destitute and broken man with nothing to his name. Comrade, the fetus has suffered a severe impact and is showing signs of a threatened miscarriage. You must stay in bed and rest completely for the next few days, or we may not be able to save the baby. The voices around me came in and out of focus, while the pain radiating from my abdomen and body slowly dragged my hazy consciousness back to the surface. A large red slogan on a green wall, appealing door. This looks like something from 40 years ago, but wait, didn't I already die? After Shen Jingza had me thrown in prison for 5 years, I died a painful death from a terminal illness. How could someone who's already dead see something that happened 40 years ago? Before I could even begin to make sense of it, the hospital room door was violently flung open. A young man in a military uniform, radiating a chilling aura, rushed to the side of my hospital bed. Li Xiangwan, why did you push Tian so viciously? Do you have any idea she almost died? 1. I swallowed the words I was about to say. What's the use in denying or explaining? In my past life, I denied it and explained it wasn't my fault, but Shen Jingza simply didn't believe me. He only believed Zhong Tian. Shen Jingza roared at me, his face a mask of fury. My gaze fell upon the face of a Shen Jingza who looked decades younger. Shen Jingza in his 20s was truly, exceptionally handsome, with his high-bridged nose and sharp features. Even those fiery eyes glaring at me were utterly captivating. In my past life, I was utterly infatuated with Shen Jingza's face. For him, I bore no regrets, and for him, I groveled and lost all dignity. Yet in the end, I came to a bad end. How naive I was back then. Even if I was framed by Zhong Tian and sent to prison by Shen Jingza, even if I was diagnosed with a terminal illness and didn't have long to live, I was still constantly thinking of Shen Jingza. I kept telling myself it was all Zhong Tian's scheme, convincing myself that Shen Jingza was deceived and innocent. Upon learning I had terminal cancer with only days to live, I pleaded with my doctor to arrange one last meeting with Shen Jingza and my son, but they heartlessly refused. The doctor told me sympathetically that Shen Jingza was taking Zhong Tian abroad for her birthday trip, fulfilling her wish, and had no time to visit me, advising me to reflect on my mistakes in prison. My son sent word telling me to just die already, to save him the embarrassment and spare his father, Shen Jingza, any trouble. Already critically ill and barely hanging on, I coughed up blood at those words and collapsed. I never imagined I'd get a second chance to see Shen Jingza's youthful face again. Looking at this man I loved for decades, who betrayed me for decades, all the love in my heart vanished without a trace. In my past life, if only Shen Jingza had been honest with me, if he had just told me straight out that the one he loved was Zhong Tian, I would have stepped aside and let him be happy. No matter how much I loved him, but Shen Jingza never told me he loved Zhong Tian. He kept insisting he only wanted to help her out of a sense of obligation, that he saw her as nothing more than a little sister. Under the noble pretense of repaying a debt of gratitude, he and Zhong Tian carried on their sordid little affair, a life spent in bleak servitude to others, and the despair and agony before death. I couldn't suppress the intense hatred welling up in my heart. I stared fixedly at Shen Jingza. If I could, I would take a vicious bite out of Shen Jingza, to vent the pent-up rage for my innocent, pitiful self from my past life. Shen Jingza didn't notice the change in my expression and continued to roar at me. I never imagined you could be so vicious and shameless. Li Xiangwan, don't think your pregnancy will save you from punishment. I'm telling you, this time, I won't let you get away with it. Shen Jing's words drew a cold laugh from me. And just how do you plan to not let me get away with it? You will apologize to Tian Tian. I'm confining you to your quarters. You will reflect deeply on your mistakes. Same old story. In my previous life, Shen Jingzi gave me 2 non-negotiable terms I had to follow, just like this. First, I had to apologize to Zhong Tian Tian and admit my mistake. Second, I was to be confined as punishment to reflect on my wrongdoing. Both conditions were mandatory, neither could be omitted. No one believed my explanation, and in the end, I was forced to apologize to Zhong Tian Tian. I thought Shen Jingzi would let me off, for the sake of our 5 years of marriage and the child I was carrying, but I was naive. On the very day I was discharged from the hospital, Shen Jingzi coldly had the guards escort me to the solitary confinement cell. I begged Shen Jingzi through tears, pleading my pregnancy. I asked him to spare me for the sake of the baby, to punish me later instead. But Shen Jingzi showed not a shred of mercy. He said I was vicious and unrepentant, and that I must be made to pay for my actions and learn my lesson so I would never dare repeat them. During those 7 days of pitch-black solitary confinement, all I could do was count the days, waiting to be released. Shen Jingzi never visited me in those 7 days, and the guards had forgotten that a pregnant woman was locked in the confinement cell. It was only when Shen Jingzi returned from accompanying Zhong Tian Tian to the capital for medical treatment that he discovered I was still in solitary confinement. A normal person can't survive 7 days without food or water. By the time I was freed, I was already in a deep coma. I was incredibly lucky to survive. I wasn't quite dead yet. And after being rushed to the hospital and fighting for my life for days, I managed to claw my way back from the brink. Having gone 7 days without food or water, my body was severely damaged, and I developed a serious stomach condition. This was likely one of the reasons I later developed the cancer that would ultimately claim my life. When I was released, Shen Jingzi was filled with remorse and treated me exceptionally well for a time. I thought he loved me. And it was that love that made me forgive him, but later, Zhong Tian Tian told me that Shen Jingzi was only nice to me because he was afraid I'd report him to his superiors. After all, if I died in confinement, 2 lives lost, it would damage Shen Jingzi's career. I refused to believe Zhong Tian Tian, and so I fell into one vicious cycle after another. In my past life, the pitiful me clung to a delusion until the very end, convincing myself that Shen Jingzi loved me and that he was merely deceived by Zhong Tian Tian. In this life, knowing the full story of the past, I will never again be fooled by Shen Jingzi's facade, because no form of love should consist of endless hurt. I looked Shen Jingzi straight in the eye, enunciating each word clearly. I am not wrong, I will not apologize, and you have no right to confine me. Shen Jingzi flew into a rage upon hearing this. Are you sure? Yes, I'm sure. Since you're so stubborn and refuse to see reason, don't blame me for what happens next. Veins bulged on Shen Jingzi's forehead as he shouted to the guards outside, take Li Xiangwan to the solitary confinement cell for reflection. I was dragged away to the solitary confinement cell by the guards. In my past life, I cared too much about appearances. To save face for Shen Jingzi as well, I chose to go quietly, escorted by the guards to the confinement cell without a word. This time around, I won't make that foolish mistake again. The moment the guards lay a hand on me, I'll scream at the top of my lungs, murder. Shen Jingzi is trying to kill me, his lawful wife, and the child in my womb, all for his mistress Zhong Tian Tian. Help, I'm innocent. Shen Jingzi never expected me to cry out my grievances so shamelessly, with no regard for dignity. With everyone staring and whispering, his humiliation was complete. Left with no other choice, Shen Jingzi resorted to covering my mouth himself. Driven by pure hatred, I sank my teeth viciously into the hand that was silencing me. Blood filled my mouth, its metallic tang spreading as I watched Shen Jingzi's face contort in pain. Does it hurt? Of course it hurts. It's bleeding, after all. But this pain is nothing compared to what I endured in my past life. I was escorted to the solitary confinement cell with a crowd watching the whole way, and everyone who saw it was buzzing with discussion. What did Li Xiangwan do to deserve being locked up like this? I heard she pushed Zhong Tian Tian, causing her serious injuries. So General Shen is making Li Xiangwan reflect on her actions, putting duty before family. Oh, I see. That's what you call reaping what you sow. But you can't say that. Li Xiangwan has a gentle personality and doesn't seem like such a vicious person. Besides, isn't she pregnant? Look, her forehead is still bleeding. For General Shen to treat his own wife like this over an outsider is just too heartless. 2. Yes, General Shen is way too concerned about that Zhong Tian. Chief Shen is a person of strong principles, clear on gratitude and grudges. She's just repaying a debt of gratitude to Zhong Tian. Even so, this is going too far. Li Xiangwan is pregnant. The law doesn't execute pregnant women convicted of murder immediately, let alone for a simple dispute like this. Chief Shen is showing far too much favoritism towards Zhong Tian. The surrounding whispers turned Shen Jing's face ashen. He never dreamed that his gentle, demure wife would embarrass him so profoundly. After I was thrown into the solitary confinement cell, he ordered the guard to lock the door. Li Xiangwan, I never imagined you could be such a shrew. I was only going to lock you up for 7 days, but clearly that's not enough for you. You can stay in there and reflect on your actions for a full 2 weeks. With those words, Shen Jingzi stormed off in a rage. The door to the solitary cell slammed shut, plunging the interior into pitch black, suffocating darkness. In my past life, I endured 7 terrifying days here, hovering between life and death in a coma. After finally recovering, I was then framed by Zhong Tian and forced into premature labor. To give birth to that wretched child, I suffered immensely. Hemorrhaged severely, and had to have my uterus removed. I poured all my love into the only child I carried within me, but that vile creature, just as wicked and shameless as his biological father Shen Jingzi, ended up favoring Zhong Tian over me, his own birth mother. Recalling the agonies of my past life, a cold smirk curled my lips. I won't allow this vile and despicable wretch to survive. I balled my hand into a fist and started delivering powerful blows to my stomach, one after another. Half an hour later, my agonized scream erupted with a deafening roar. Hearing the noise, someone came and opened the solitary confinement cell, only to find me lying on the floor, covered in blood. I had a miscarriage. I was rushed to the hospital, still covered in blood. Shen Jingzi had been sitting by Zhong Tian's hospital bed, but he shot to his feet the moment the guard told him I'd been taken to the hospital after miscarrying. He rushed out of the hospital room in a hurry, completely missing the triumphant smile in Zhong Tian's eyes from the hospital bed. After my dilation and curettage procedure, I was wheeled out of the operating room and immediately spotted Shen Jingzi standing outside, his face grim. He took a step forward, reaching for my hand, but I gave him a single word: get lost. Shen Jingzi took 2 steps back, watching blankly as the nurse wheeled me past him. After the nurse finished my 4 drip, Shen Jingzi actually followed me back into the room. Standing in the hospital room, his face wore a rare look of sorrow. Was he upset because of the lost child? How could that be? In my past life, that wretched child who was always devoted to Zhong Tian kept saying that if it weren't for his existence, Shen Jingzi would have divorced me and married Zhong Tian long ago. It was only because of his existence that Shen Jingzi couldn't bring himself to end this marriage and name only that we had. So now that the wretched child is gone, Shen Jingzi should be overjoyed, shouldn't he? I watched as Shen Jingzi slowly walked to the bedside. I stared at him with a detached gaze, devoid of any joy or sorrow. Shen Jingzi reached out to touch me, but perhaps my expression was too icy, and he withdrew his hand. He said in a strained, hollow voice, Xiangwan, I never expected this to happen with the baby. Please focus on recovering. We can have another child in the future. Ha, another child. Is this just to placate me? After all, something as significant as my miscarriage in the confinement cell must have already spread throughout the entire military district. Shen Jing's strict military discipline is admirable, but to be so heartless to his own partner, I wonder what gossip is circulating about him, not to mention that my miscarriage involves another woman. Shen Jing's special treatment of Zhong Tian is plain for all to see. I imagine the gossip must have already started outside, hasn't it? I'll definitely add more fuel to the fire and make those rumors spread even more fiercely. As I was thinking this, a nurse hurriedly pushed the door open, looking for Shen Jingzi. Commander Shen, Comrade Zhong has fallen and fainted. According to the nurse, Zhong Tian wanted to come see me after learning about my miscarriage, but she was far too weak. She only made it a few steps before collapsing and fainting in the hallway. Zhong Tian has always been fond of using such tricks to lure Shen Jingzi away. It worked like a charm every single time in our past life, but this time, her plan might just backfire. Shen Jingzi left, worried about Zhong Tian, while I lay in bed, sobbing my heart out. Hearing my wailing, the nurses, doctors, and even people from the neighboring ward rushed over. Everyone, knowing I had lost my child, kindly comforted me. Through my tears, I recounted to the nurses, doctors, and the curious onlookers all the schemes Zhong Tiantian and Shen Jingzi had pulled, ever since Zhong Tiantian arrived. The heart of Shen Jingzi, the other half on my marriage certificate, has been completely swayed. Shen Jingzi arranged a job for her and even gave the majority of his salary to Zhong Tiantian to spend. Zhong Tiantian clung to Shen Jingzi all day long, deliberately provoking me to fight with him, and constantly made excuses to call him away. She didn't even hesitate to call Shen Jingzi away late at night, using the excuse of being scared of thunder and rain, keeping him by her side the whole night. Zhong Tiantian even had the audacity to threaten to kill the baby in my womb to force me to divorce Shen Jingzi. Everything I've said is the truth about what Zhong Tiantian did, and everyone in the military district has seen it with their own eyes. We just didn't know the two of them were secretly alone together in a room late at night, so, the look in everyone's eyes changed. On top of that, now that I've lost the baby, Shen Jingzi has completely ignored me after the miscarriage, yet he treats Zhong Tiantian like she's at his beck and call. Everyone has seen that too. 3. The nurses, doctors, and fellow patients all listened with righteous indignation, judging by their expressions. I knew the news of Shen Jingzi's affair with Zhong Tiantian would spread throughout the entire military compound in no more than 2 days. Shen Jingzi was summoned for a talk by his superiors. Shen Jingzi explained to his superiors that his relationship with Zhong Tiantian was completely innocent, and that he was only helping her out of a sense of gratitude. The leadership still has faith in Shen Jingzi, but the rumors outside have simply gotten out of hand. The leader is Shen Jingzi's old superior, thinks very highly of him, and advised him to be mindful of appearances and keep his distance from Zhong Tiantian. When Shen Jingzi showed up at the hospital again, his face was like a thundercloud. He shut the door and warned me, "Li Xiangwan, you almost ruined me. Because of your recklessness, I was called in for a talk with the leadership. Do you have any idea how much this could damage my future promotion prospects?" I smirked. Good. That's exactly the impact I wanted. In my past life, I endured humiliation and suffering in silence, while Shen Jingzi and Zhong Tiantian lived it up without a care in the world. After going through such a painful experience, how could I possibly let him rise through the ranks smoothly in this life, just like he did before? Since I've been reborn, I might as well do something to make my enemies miserable, right? Shen Jingzi had no idea what was going on in my mind. I loved him so much, and I cared deeply about his future. He knew I would follow his words without a single complaint. He instructed me, "From now on, you need to clarify every single rumor out there. You must make everyone understand that my relationship with Zhong Tiantian is purely platonic, like brother and sister." "Is it really just a sibling bond? As far as I know, you two aren't related by blood at all," I retorted. My sarcastic smile seemed to grate on him. Shen Jingzi found it irritating and continued. Displeased, "If I had any other thoughts about Zhong Tiantian, why would I have married you? In my past life, he brainwashed me just like this, and I was foolish enough to believe him." Now, hearing his familiar explanation, I couldn't help but laugh again. Shen Jingzi was somewhat annoyed by my laughter. "Xiangwan, this is not the time for tantrums and jealousy. It's because you wouldn't listen that I'm in this mess. I'm warning you. Behave yourself. If you keep being this unreasonable, I'll divorce you." A divorce was exactly what I wanted. I nodded immediately. "Fine, let's get a divorce. We'll go right now." Shen Jingzi hadn't expected me to say that, and his expression froze. "What nonsense are you spouting? I'm not being unreasonable. I'd rather get a clean divorce than share my husband with another woman. Let's go our separate ways and each find our own path." Hearing this, Shen Jingzi was furious. "What do you mean? Li Xiangwan, ours is a military marriage. It's not something you can just dissolve on a whim. So what? Are you going to live in this humiliation for the rest of your life? Are you really going to let your precious little sister be your mistress forever?" The term mistress wasn't common in those days. Shen Jingzi was taken aback. "What mistress? What on earth is a mistress?" Shen Jingzi was pressing me for answers, but of course I wasn't going to explain in detail. "Shen Jingzi, if you want me to trust you, you must promise to have no contact with Zhong Tiantian from now on. Can you do that?" To my surprise, Shen Jingzi actually agreed. "From now on, I'll leave all matters concerning Zhong Tiantian to you. I promise I won't have any private contact with her." This change was something that never happened in my past life. Shen Jingzi's decision to back down, after weighing the pros and cons for his promotion, was within my expectations. Zhong Tiantian isn't as sharp as he is. I bet she'll stir up trouble the moment she can't get to Shinjingza. I can't wait for Zhong Tian to make her move. Now that I've been reborn, it's high time I reclaimed some of the pain and injustice from my past life. Zhong Tian has no idea that Shinjingza is distancing himself from her to advance his career. Just like in her past life, she's still faking illness in the hospital, playing the victim while waiting for Shinjingza to visit. After waiting for days with no visit from Shinjingza, Zhong Tian couldn't take it anymore. She sent countless messengers to exaggerate her condition, hoping to lure him to her side. When Shinjingza heard that Zhong Tian was coughing up blood, he was beside himself with worry, but his superior had given him a direct order he couldn't disobey. In the end, he had no choice but to come to me. Zhong Tian was fully expecting Shinjingza to visit. Instead, she got me, not seeing the man she'd been pining for, and after making sure we were alone, Zhong Tian glared at me and snarled, "What are you doing here? What brings you here? To see what trouble you're stirring up." I wandered around the ward. "Didn't you claim to be dying? Look at you, all rosy-cheeked and fine." Zhong Tian. "Don't you think faking illness is such a tired old trick, with her cover blown?" Zhong Tian dropped the act. "Li Xiangwan, it must be agony losing a child, right? I was the one who ended your baby's life, but Brother Jingza doesn't pity you, he only believes me. For my sake, he has to wrong you, his rightful wife. It must be tearing you apart inside, isn't it? You're reading too much into it," I replied with a calm smile. "If keeping Shinjingza away from a disgusting woman like you is the goal, what's the big deal about losing a child?" Zhong Tian. "You probably don't know this yet, but Shinjingza won't be coming to see you anymore." Zhong Tian was stunned. "What do you mean?" "Exactly what I said. Rumors are flying everywhere about you and Shinjingza having an affair. To protect his reputation, he's going to start keeping his distance from you from now on." "You?" Zhong Tian was shocked by my words. "Li Xiangwan, what have you done?" "Don't rush, I'll explain it to you slowly." I walked to the bedside and looked down at Zhong Tian from above. "Zhong Tian, I know your filthy thoughts. You just want to kill the baby in my womb, break me and Shinjingza apart, so you can take my place, don't you? So I decided to help you out. To be honest, I'm the one who got rid of the baby, and I'm also the one who spread the word about your affair with Shinjingza. How is that possible? Are you insane?" Zhong Tian knew how precious the baby in my womb was to me. She knew how deeply I loved Shinjingza and how much I cared about protecting his reputation. Zhong Tian was both horrified and utterly enraged to think that I would actively get rid of the bastard child and tarnish Shinjingza's reputation. She knows full well how devastating the consequences of my actions will be for her and Shinjingza. "You shameless woman, how dare you use your own flesh and blood to scheme against me? Your heart is truly vile. Compared to you, I'm merely an amateur." Zhong Tian, from now on, I'm going to make you experience the very pain I once endured. "Oh really? Then let's see who has the last laugh." With that, Zhong Tian raised her hand and viciously slapped herself across the face. Twice, 2 loud cracks resounded, and both sides of Zhong Tian's face swelled up instantly. She truly spared no effort in hurting herself. Blood was already seeping from the corner of her mouth, licking the crimson blood from her lips. Zhong Tian glared at me with venomous eyes and cried out, "Li Xiangwan attacked someone, help." With that, she leaped off the bed and dashed barefoot toward the door, but Zhong Tian had barely taken 2 steps before she found herself frozen in place. From behind, I seized Zhong Tian's hair and yanked her back with all my strength. Just as Zhong Tian had slapped herself to frame me, I put every ounce of my power into pulling her hair. I could see the agonized, twisted expression on Zhong Tian's face. Amid her screams, I dragged Zhong Tian by the hair and slammed her head against the wall, one blow after another. For Zhong Tian never expected me to resort to violence. After all, I used to be the ultimate pushover, gentle, kind, and timid. My savage, forceful blows made Zhong Tian scream out in pain before she quickly passed out from the agony. Staring at Zhong Tian lying unconscious on the ground, I stepped outside, wiped my hands over my eyes, and soon found myself in tears. The nurse who heard the commotion in the hallway hurried over. Seeing me in a pitiful state, tears streaming down my face, she immediately stopped and asked, "Comrade Li, what's wrong? Who upset you?" The nurses who came were all familiar faces. During my hospitalization after the miscarriage, I had earned a great deal of sympathy from the doctors and nurses. On top of that, Zhong Tian wasn't actually sick at all. She had been occupying a hospital bed the whole time, feigning illness. The doctors and nurses were thoroughly fed up with her. I was sobbing uncontrollably. I'm done for. I'm definitely done for. Zhong Tian. She slapped herself to frame me, and now she's faking a faint and lying on the ground. She slapped herself and faked a faint. Several nurses exchanged glances. Zhong Tian had a terrible character, bossing everyone around in the hospital just because she had Shen Jing's backing. The nurses were already annoyed by her condescending attitude, and knowing she was the other woman who broke up my marriage with Shen Jing's made them despise her even more. I kept sobbing. What should I do? What on earth am I supposed to do? I can't clear my name now even if I jumped into the Yellow River. If Shen Jing's finds out, he'll definitely blame me. I'm done for. This is outrageous. Comradely. Don't be afraid, we'll testify for you. Several nurses immediately took my side. Thank you, but she's still lying on the floor, pretending to be unconscious. How should we handle this? We'll go in with you to have a look. Accompanied by several nurses, I returned to the ward. Zhong Tian was lying on the floor, unconscious. Several nurses looked at her with disgust. Enough of the act. Get up. Zhong Tian, who was unconscious, naturally didn't respond. Wiping my tears, I walked over, crouched down, and reached out to touch her. Stop pretending, get up now. As I touched Zhong Tian, the needle tip I was holding between my fingers was forcefully driven into her side. That was the large sewing needle I had specifically brought to deal with Zhong Tian, a good 6 or 7 centimeters long. The effect of such a long needle piercing into flesh was predictable. The unconscious Zhong Tian let out a sharp, pained yelp, as Zhong Tian's eyes flew open. I swiftly pulled the needle out and concealed it in my sleeve. The searing pain jolted Zhong Tian upright, and her gaze met the malicious glint in my eyes. Blinded by hatred and rage, Zhong Tian lashed out without a second thought, her hand flying toward my face. A nearby nurse grabbed Zhong Tian's wrist. Have you lost your mind? Seeing this, several other nurses rushed over and pinned her down. Restrained and unable to move, Zhong Tian was completely stunned. She was usually sharp and cunning in her scheming, but after a moment of stunned surprise, she instantly resumed her pitiful, heart-wrenching act. She complained to the nurses restraining her. Li Xiangwan hit me. She slapped my face, grabbed my hair, and slammed my head against the wall. She assaulted me on purpose. I'm calling the police to have her arrested. Zhong Tian fully expected her revelation of the truth to gain support, but the nurses only looked at her with contempt. Enough, Comrade Zhong, drop the act. We know you're putting on this whole show to frame Comrade Li. This kind of thinking is unacceptable and must be corrected immediately. I'm not faking it, I'm really. The headache was unbearable, my face ached, and of course, the spot on my waist where I'd jabbed myself with the needle throbbed with pain. Zhong Tian explained herself urgently, but no one believed her. Several nurses sided with me. Comrade Li, don't be afraid, we'll back you up. This whole thing was orchestrated by Zhong Tian herself. Zhong Tian's head was throbbing, and her face ached, but no one believed her. Several nurses were shouting about calling the police, even producing Zhong Tian's ridiculous medical record. You're faking an illness to hog a hospital bed. We will report this truthfully. Zhong Tian backed down. The only reason she could manipulate Shen Jingzi was because he cared for and liked her. They weren't her parents or family, so of course they weren't going to indulge her. The onlookers could see perfectly well what was right and what was wrong. Zhong Tian herself knew that making a bigger scene would only backfire on her. So, she swallowed her anger and let it go. Surrounded by nurses, I was ushered out. I glanced back at Zhong Tian without thinking and flashed her a provocative smile. Zhong Tian, this is just the beginning, the best is yet to come. Having taught Zhong Tian a little lesson, I returned home in high spirits. To my surprise, I found the ever-busy Shen Jingzi at home for once. He bought the oranges and candies I love. As soon as I got back, he asked about Zhong Tian. How is Tian doing? How very concerned he is. If he weren't afraid of it hindering his promotion, Shen Jingzi would have rushed to the hospital to see Zhong Tian by now, wouldn't he? I replied with a blank expression. She's doing just fine. After all, she still has the energy to frame and slander me. What do you mean? Shen Jingzi was taken aback. I went to see Zhong Tian like you asked, and I even brought fruit, but she was completely ungrateful. She threw the fruit away, slapped her own face, pretended to faint, and tried to frame me. If it weren't for the nurses at the hospital who saw the whole thing right at the door, I would have been completely wronged by her today. How is that possible? Shinjing's face was a picture of disbelief. If you don't believe me, go ask the nurses at the hospital. It wasn't just one person who saw her try to frame me. There were 4 witnesses. Shinjingza fell into a rare silence. Why would she try to frame you? You don't know, I retorted. Looking at Shinjingza shook his head. I scoffed. Zhong Tian said I'm not worthy of being your wife. That she is. Shinjingza's expression, which had been grave, immediately darkened at my words. Not this again, Li Xiangwan. When will you ever learn? How many times do I have to tell you? Tian and I are like siblings. There is absolutely nothing between us. But you two aren't actually siblings, are you? Regardless, my conscience is clear. Shinjingza even warned me, behave yourself and don't cause me any trouble. As if sensing his tone had been too harsh with me, he softened his voice. Xiangwan, be a good girl and listen to me. What happened with the baby was my fault. I apologize. We can have another child in the future. He thought it was a great favor to me that he was willing to let me have his child, little knowing that I was a completely different person inside. I would never, ever have a child for Shinjingza. He can forget about that dream. After I hit her, Zhong Tian suffered a real concussion and had to stay in the hospital for several days. Even during those days, she didn't forget to stir up trouble, calling Shinjingza several times from the hospital phone. She even had someone deliver a letter to Shinjingza for her. After failing to hear back from Shinjingza, Zhong Tian panicked. She left the hospital and came to find him in person, with tears welling up in her eyes. Zhong Tian knocked on the door to Shinjingza's and my place, only to find him having lunch with me. Seeing Shinjingza place a piece of spare ribs into my bowl, Zhong Tian could hardly believe her eyes. She sobbed, Jingza, are you just going to abandon me? Looking at Zhong Tian's swollen face, at her pitiful, sickly appearance, how could Shinjingza remain unmoved? Tian, how could I ever abandon you? I've just been so busy lately. Zhong Tian threw herself into Shinjingza's arms, crying, I thought you didn't want me anymore. Jingza, I was so scared you'd leave me. You promised my parents you'd take care of me. Sobs. Zhong Tian's parents had done Shinjingza a great favor. At the mention of them, a look of guilt flashed across Shinjingza's face. I thought Zhong Tian would seize the chance to tell on me for hitting her and drive a wedge between Shinjingza and me. Turns out, she's gotten smarter. She didn't breathe a single word about how I dealt with her at the hospital. All she did was reminisce with Shinjingza to rekindle their bond. In the end, she even apologized to me in tears right in front of him. Sis, I'm so sorry. My being here has put you in an awkward position. Please don't worry. Once I've recovered, I'll transfer somewhere else. You won't have to worry about me affecting your relationship with brother Jingza anymore. After saying that, Zhong Tian actually knelt before me, kowtowing repeatedly, begging for my forgiveness. I have to admit, Zhong Tian's tactic of retreating in order to advance was truly effective. Shinjingza's heart ached for her to the extreme, and he immediately rushed over to help her up. Your sister-in-law isn't that petty a person. Tian, we're not going anywhere. We'll stay right here, so it's easier for me to take care of you. Leaning on Shinjingza's hand, Zhong Tian stood up. As she began pouring her heart out about the past, I couldn't bear to listen any longer and turned to leave. I knew perfectly well that Zhong Tian had learned to play it smart. I also knew she wouldn't rush to tattle on me right away. She was retreating to advance, aiming to win Shinjingza's sympathy before pulling the same old tricks on me again. After wandering outside for a few hours, I returned to find Zhong Tian was gone. Shinjingza was sitting alone in the living room. Seeing me return, he spoke up, Xiangwan, we need to talk. Alright. I nodded and walked over to sit across from him. What did you want to talk about? About Tian. Shinjingza took my hand. Xiangwan, my feelings for Tian are truly just like a brother's. You know her parents have been like benefactors to me. I can never repay them. They only have Tian, this one daughter. So the only way I can repay them is through her. Fine, I won't stop you from repaying your debt. Whatever you want to do with Zhong Tian, you don't need to run it by me. I don't care. 5. Xiangwan, don't say things in anger. I know you've gotten the wrong idea, thinking there's something improper between me and Tian. I swear, I really only see Tian as a little sister. The only person I want to spend the rest of my life with is you, the me from my past life. Hearing such a heartfelt confession from him, would have fallen for it completely and foolishly devoted myself to him without a second thought. It's a pity I'm not that foolishly Xiangwan from my past life anymore. the one whose heart was filled with nothing but romance. I withdrew my hand. I understand what you're saying. Is there anything else? Shinjingzi was taken aback by my apparent indifference to his heartfelt confession. He took my hand in his once more and spoke with grave sincerity. Xiangwan, I have to leave immediately for a mission and I'll be gone for a while. After I'm gone, you must get along peacefully with Tian Tian. She's promised to listen to you from now on. You must fulfill your duties as her sister-in-law. I'm entrusting Tian Tian to you. Wait for me to come back. It sounded almost like he was entrusting me with a dependent. I raised an eyebrow and said, of course. I'll take very good care of your dear little sister Tian Tian. Shinjingzi led the team on a mission to the south. Before departing, he repeatedly urged me and Zhong Tian Tian to get along peacefully. Both Zhong Tian Tian and I nodded in unspoken agreement. Peaceful coexistence is out of the question. I know Zhong Tian Tian won't let this go, and neither will I. Once Shinjingzi returns from this mission, Zhong Tian Tian and I will settle this once and for all. It's a fight to the death. Either she dies or I do. Our gazes met, each reflecting the same steely resolve. On the first day after Shinjingzi left, Zhong Tian Tian and I got along harmoniously. She took the initiative to call me sister-in-law and came over to help me tidy up, do chores, and cook. On the second day after Shinjingzi's departure, Zhong Tian Tian bought me a piece of clothing and a pair of shoes, and even treated me to a movie. She affectionately linked arms with me, calling me sister-in-law over and over. Making sure everyone in the compound saw just how close we were, we went everywhere together, supporting each other like real sisters-in-law. All the previous unpleasantness seemed to have vanished into thin air. On the 10th day after Shinjingzi left, Zhong Tian Tian knocked on my door first thing in the morning, bringing me breakfast. Sis, I'm off today. How about we go for a walk by the river? Great, I'd be delighted to. Zhong Tian Tian had already packed our picnic lunch, and she warmly linked her arm with mine as we stepped out the door. Whenever we ran into someone we knew, Zhong Tian Tian would cheerfully greet them and announce that she and I were off to enjoy the riverside. After sharing the news with about a dozen people along the way, Zhong Tian Tian and I loaded up our food, hopped on the old-fashioned bicycle, and headed straight for the little river. Just before we arrived, I said I had a stomachache and needed to find a place to relieve myself. So I slipped away for a moment. By the time I made it back to the riverbank, Zhong Tian Tian had already been waiting there for me for over an hour. Her face was etched with impatience as she paced back and forth, her eyes brimming with resentment, muttering under her breath. I cleared my throat. Tian Tian, sorry to keep you waiting so long. The moment she saw me, Zhong Tiantian's expression instantly changed. The venomous look from a moment ago seemed to have been a trick of my eyes. Sis-in-law, the scenery here is so beautiful. I borrowed a camera. Let me take a few photos of you. I happily agreed and stood by the riverbank, letting Zhong Tian Tian take several pictures of me. Several times, Zhong Tian Tian let out cheerful laughter and lunged toward me, but I, standing by the river's edge, deftly avoided her each time. I laughed heartily, while Zhong Tiantian's laughter grew increasingly cold. After several failed attempts to lunge at me, Zhong Tian Tian then took the initiative to lay out the picnic blanket and set out the food. She spread the picnic blanket by the river, choosing the side facing the water for herself and leaving the side closest to the river for me to sit on. I'm starving, sis, come and eat. Zhong Tian Tian eagerly offered me some food, but I didn't take it. Instead, I stared straight at her and said, all right, out with it. What's your game? What game could I possibly be playing? Zhong Tian Tian replied with a forced smile. I lowered my voice. I know you were just looking for a chance to shove me into the river and then jump in after me to make it look like I pushed you in. That didn't work. So now you're trying this. Let me guess what you're planning next. I stared at Zhong Tiantian's pale face. You put something in the food to trick me. Zhong Tian Tian, did you really think I was that stupid? Did you think I wouldn't be on my guard at all after learning you're a viper? So you figured it out. I thought I could fool you for a few more days. I didn't expect you to be this clever. With the mask torn off, Zhong Tian Tian dropped the act. Li Xiangwan, since you already know, I won't hide it from you any longer. Today is the day you die. With those words, she lunged at me. I was sitting with my back to the stream when Zhong Tian Tian charged at me, sending us both tumbling into the water. This was the same trick Zhong Tian Tian used on me in my past life. In my past life, Zhong Tian Tian lured me to the riverbank, shoved me into the water, and framed it as a murder attempt, my attempt on her life. I know how to swim, but Zhong Tian Tian doesn't. Not long after falling into the river, someone arranged by Zhong Tiantian came and rescued her. They then helped Zhong Tiantian testify that I was trying to kill her. Everyone believed Zhong Tiantian, and Shen Jingzi believed her story too. In the name of justice, he turned against his own and sent me to prison. Zhong Tiantian's scheme against me happened a full 30 years earlier in this life than in the last. If this were the Li Shengwan from my past life, I'd be dead for sure, but I'm not that Li Shengwan anymore. The moment Zhong Tiantian asked me to meet by the river, I knew exactly what she was planning. I knew Zhong Tiantian had arranged for witnesses to frame me. I decided to play along and let her dig her own grave. After tumbling into the river, I instantly seized Zhong Tiantian's head and shoved it underwater, forcing her to gulp down a mouthful of water. As Zhong Tiantian choked and gulped until her eyes rolled back, slipping into unconsciousness, I yanked her hair and smashed her head against the jagged rocks lining the bank, blow after blow. Zhong Tiantian's once pretty face was now a bloody mess, but it still wasn't enough. In my past life, I had my uterus removed and could never bear children. How could I ever forget that kind of pain? Since we're starting over, Zhong Tiantian should get a taste of what it's like to lose her womb. The steel rebar, prepared long in advance by the riverbank, pierced through Zhong Tiantian's lower body. I watched the blood slowly stain the river water red. Then, satisfied, I dragged Zhong Tiantian by her hair as I swam to the shore, screaming for help at the top of my lungs. 6. The witness Zhong Tiantian had found arrived just in time, and she was rushed to the hospital. I lay on the ground by the riverbank, a cold sneer curling at the corner of my mouth. Now, it's Shen Jingzi's turn to put on a show. Shen Jingzi didn't return until a week later. Upon hearing the devastating news of Zhong Tiantian's injury, he rushed to the hospital immediately. Zhong Tiantian had been resuscitated, but like my past self, she lost the chance to ever become a mother. Her fate was even crueler than mine had been. She was disfigured, her face left covered in pitted scars. Zhong Tiantian clung to Shen Jingzi, sobbing uncontrollably as she accused me of trying to harm her. Zhong Tiantian had been waiting for this day for a long time, but the outcome was nothing like she had imagined. Her face was disfigured, while I emerged completely unscathed. When Zhong Tiantian came to, any claim of having no regrets was a lie. She couldn't fathom how I had managed to retaliate with such ferocity. She couldn't fathom how she had gone from being the perpetrator to the victim. At this point, Zhong Tiantian knew she had no other way out. She was determined to pin this on me and make me pay the price. She was resolved to exploit Shen Jingzi's sense of obligation to make him take responsibility for her. As expected, Shen Jingzi was furious when he heard that I was the one who caused Zhong Tiantian to end up like this. Just like before, Zhong Tiantian found a few capable accomplice witnesses. The accomplice witnesses unanimously testified against me on Zhong Tiantian's behalf, and they spoke quite convincingly. They claimed that after Shen Jingzi left, I had been bullying Zhong Tiantian. Zhong Tiantian tried to win me over by buying me clothes and shoes, doing household chores, and even inviting me on a spring outing, hoping to change my opinion of her. Little did she know I would cruelly turn on her. They saw with their own eyes as I forced Zhong Tiantian's head under the water. With both evidence and witnesses present, I am undeniably the one to blame. Just like in my past life, there's only one path left for me: prison. Shen Jingzi was furious at my viciousness and shamelessness. He was heartbroken by Zhong Tiantian's current plight and promised her that he would make things right. Meanwhile, I stayed at home, bracing myself for the storm of Shen Jingzi's wrath. In the days I spent waiting for Shen Jingzi to come back and confront me, I used the spare time to pack up all my belongings. I sold off most of the furniture in the house, even my bicycle. I sewed all the money into my clothes. A detailed plan has been laid out, and I'm just waiting to break it off with Shen Jingzi. The door was kicked open violently, and Shen Jingzi stormed in. He grabbed me by the collar and lifted me up. Li Shengwan, why did you do this? I pried Shen Jingzi's fingers off with force. Shen Jingzi, if I told you none of this was my doing, that it was all Zhong Tiantian's scheme, would you believe me? Bullshit. Shen Jingzi naturally didn't believe a word I said, his anger boiling over into a crude outburst. Li Shengwan, Tiantian can't swim, but you can. Do you really think someone who can't swim would be foolish enough to try and set up someone who can? Just like in my past life, Shen Jingzi remained steadfast in his belief that Zhong Tiantian would never take such a risk. He confronted me furiously. Besides, if Tiantian was the one scheming against you, why would she end up disfigured and unable to have children for the rest of her life? I scoffed. That's easy to explain. Her plan backfired, something went wrong, even now. You're still being so stubborn, Li Xiangwan. Do you think I'm obligated to protect you, to defend you unconditionally? Don't you realize what you're doing is a crime? You could go to jail for this. Of course I know, but none of this is my fault. Zhong Tian brought this on herself. You still refuse to repent, Li Xiangwan. You're even more vicious and shameless than I imagined, more deranged, too, since you're hellbent on causing trouble. Don't blame me for what comes next. I won't let you get away with this. Fine, I'll be waiting. Just like in my past life, it ended this way. I'd long stopped expecting anything different, yet my heart still ached with a sharp, sudden pain. So, how do you plan to punish me, Shenjingzi? Seeing my indifferent attitude, Shenjingzi kicked the sofa in frustration. First, go to the hospital and apologize sincerely to Tian. I won't apologize. Then you can rot in jail, I'm telling you, Li Xiangwan. I would never marry a heartless woman like you. If you're imprisoned, I'm divorcing you. Fine, that's exactly what I wanted. I produced the divorce papers I had prepared long ago. Sign it, we're getting divorced right now. Shenjingzi looked from the divorce agreement to me. You were prepared for this. You knew I would ask for a divorce. Why? 7. No reason, just sign it. Shenjingzi, who had never been bested by me before, was absolutely furious. He snatched the pen I offered, scrawled his signature on the divorce papers, and then flung them at me. You got what you wanted. I bent down to pick up the divorce agreement, and by the time I straightened up, Shenjingzi was already striding away. At the doorway, he didn't forget to hurl a final threat. Just you wait, the police will be here for you any minute now. With a cold sneer, I grabbed the divorce papers and headed straight for the Civil Affairs Bureau. An hour later, I walked out of the Civil Affairs Bureau with 2 divorce certificates in hand. The smoothness of the divorce was a relief. Now, all that was left to wait for was the police interrogation. I wasn't the least bit afraid of the police questioning. Zhong Tian wasn't the only one who could find witnesses to testify against me. After a lifetime, I too have it, and mine is even more thorough than Zhong Tian's preparations. The police never came to me, so I took the evidence and went to them to report the crime. I had my evidence ready and thorough, knowing that I could swim. Zhong Tian prepared food spiked with sleeping pills for me. She meant for me to pass out, fall into the river, and drown. She just never expected I'd see through her scheme. So, Zhong Tian changed her plan on the spot, intending to stage an accident where I, supposedly, pushed her, a non-swimmer, into the water, knowing what Zhong Tian was up to. I arranged for a few witnesses in advance. They were nurses from the hospital. They immediately sent the food, which Zhong Tian had laced with sleeping pills, for testing. They witnessed with their own eyes Zhong Tian pushing me into the river, and they also confirmed that she herself had purchased a substantial amount of sleeping pills. As for why Zhong Tian suffered such severe injuries while trying to harm someone, it's because she can't swim and had incredibly bad luck. She accidentally hit a hard rock, which disfigured her face, and then, as if fate had it, a piece of rebar floating in the river punctured her uterus. Rocks and rebar can't talk, and there are no traceable fingerprints to prove anyone else harmed her. Zhong Tian is just going to have to swallow this bitter pill. I provided evidence to testify against Zhong Tian's crimes, and the evidence of her criminal acts is conclusive, because she lost her uterus and is physically weak. The police are planning to arrest her once she recovers her health. Having divorced Shenjingzi, I had no attachments left. Without a second thought, I immediately bought a train ticket and headed south. Punishing Zhong Tian is my goal, but it is not the ultimate one. Zhong Tian is certainly despicable, but Shenjingzi is equally to blame. Dealing with Zhong Tian alone isn't enough. Knowing how things unfold, I'm aware that Shenjingzi is in for a world of hurt. Without the help of my past self, he's going to suffer terribly, absolutely terribly. I'm just waiting for Shenjingzi's comeuppance. After leaving, I threw myself completely into building my career, dedicating all my energy to it. Knowing what was coming next was a huge help to me. I successfully started from the bottom and worked my way up, achieving solid results in less than 5 years. As the winds of reform and opening up swept across the land, I was among the first to dive into the business world and reap the rewards. The company I founded expanded rapidly, and after over a decade, I became the first woman to top the wealth rankings by assets. With my capital and a team I assembled, I established branches nationwide and devoted myself to philanthropy. I never expected to encounter Shenjingzi during a charity event in Jiangqing. In the span of more than 10 years. Shen Jingzi had gone from a dashing military officer to a wheelchair-bound individual with disabilities. I was speaking on stage, while he watched me from below, seated in his wheelchair. When our eyes met, my expression was one of understanding, but his face was filled with shock. I saw Shen Jingzi's lips moving, though I couldn't hear the sound. I could clearly read what he was saying. It was unmistakably the two words, Xiangwan. After making a sizable donation. I was about to drive away when Shen Jingzi blocked my car in his wheelchair. Xiangwan, do you have any idea how long I've been looking for you? I asked him indifferently. What do you want with me? I never intended for you to go to jail, and I never intended to divorce you. I was just angry. I tried to persuade Zhong Tian to drop the charges against you, but by the time I convinced her, you were already gone. Is this supposed to be a belated apology, even if it is? Why should I accept his apology? Seeing me stare at him coldly without a word, Shen Jingzi's face darkened, his lips quivered. Xiangwan, I had no idea Zhong Tian could be so despicable. I was completely deceived by her. That's why enough, I don't care, we're divorced. After all, your business is no longer my concern. I stared at Shen Jingzi, enunciating each word clearly. Would you mind moving out of the way? I'm in a hurry to see my husband and son. Today is our 6th wedding anniversary. You're married, you got married, and have a child. Shen Jingzi's face turned ashen as he shifted his wheelchair. My driver started the engine. As the car began to move, Shen Jingzi suddenly spoke out. Xiangwan, I had a dream. In it, you loved me deeply, you never left my side, and we had a son together. Oh, really? I asked, lowering the car window as I looked at Shen Jingzi with a smile. I suppose there was more to that dream, wasn't there? Like how you turned a blind eye to me for Zhong Tiantian's sake, or how you had me thrown in jail because of her, or how you and that ungrateful son of yours both favored and bullied me for Zhong Tian, just like you always do. Shen Jingzi's face turned as pale as snow, while I continued, beaming. In that dream, you were on the brink of death after a heroic act, weren't you? It was Zhong Tian who begged a famous doctor on her knees to snatch you back from the jaws of death. Then, in the dream, your career skyrocketed, and you spent a lifetime thanking Zhong Tian as your savior. Am I right? How do you know that? Shen Jingzi asked me urgently. How I know is none of your business, but let me tell you something. Do you know why you've been confined to that wheelchair ever since your heroic deed in this life? It's because I didn't travel hundreds of miles to beg medical experts on my knees to save you, like I did in the dream. That's why you're crippled. 8. So. It was you who saved me in our past life, not Zhong Tian. No wonder, I scoffed. Shen Jingzi, did you dream that I got a terminal illness and died a miserable death in prison? What were you thinking? Shen Jingzi, relieved, I bet, after all, only with me dead could you rightfully marry your precious Zhong Tian. No, that's not it. I didn't know you would die. I thought you were faking it. By the time I rushed back, you were already. I regret it so much. Is this what you call a belated regret? But what good is that to me now? Shen Jingzi murmured. Xiangwan, I know it was all Zhong Tiantian's fault. I didn't let her off the hook. I punished her. She's just been released and is in a terrible state. That put my mind at ease. I rolled up the car window and told the driver, let's go. The car drove off, and Shen Jingzi in his wheelchair grew smaller and smaller in the distance. Seeing Jingzi like this now, I finally let out a long sigh of relief. In this lifetime, I have no regrets. The car sped along the road. The brick-sized cell phone beside me rang. It was my current husband calling. I answered, and his gentle voice came through the line. Xiangwan, our son and I are waiting for you. Okay, I'll be right there. No one can live in the past forever. Shen Jingzi is now a part of my history. I have a loving husband and an adorable son. In this life, I will no longer depend on or trust any man. I am the queen of my own destiny. Story 2, Song Lian and I were reborn at the same time, just like in his previous life. He came to marry me full of anticipation, but I refused. Song Lian was stunned. Why? We've been happily married for 50 years. I shook my head indifferently. After being called Mrs. Song all my life, I also want to have my own name. Song Lian didn't understand and thought I was throwing a tantrum. Without me, what else can you do? You wouldn't even be qualified to sweep the streets. He was waiting for me to regret it. After waiting for many years, he watched helplessly as I reached the peak, becoming someone he could no longer reach. 1. The day Song Lian was appointed as an honorary professor at the university happened to be our 50th wedding anniversary. Our two sons made arrangements and held a lively celebration party at home. During the dinner, a young female reporter interviewed me. "Mrs. Song, if there is a next life, would you still be willing to marry Professor Song?" She was only in her early 20s, full of vitality. Her deer-like eyes swept over the wedding rings on Song Lian's and my fingers, and her eyes were filled with yearning for love. I knew what she meant. Song Lian and I were well-known affectionate couple, and the media had reported on us several times. We were college classmates. During the educated youth movement, we were also in the same rural area. We stayed together through 60 years of trials and tribulations. I took care of our two children, managed household affairs, and looked after Song Lian's sick mother. Song Lian devoted himself to his career, starting as an unknown poor student. He became a professor at a prestigious university, joined the Chinese